Oh, hey!
A Bootsy Cox Productions presents A Christmas Carol, written by Charles Dickens, adapted for audio by Tyler Schmid.
Marley was dead, to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that. Scrooge knew he was dead? Of course he did. Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I'm going to relate. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, clutching, covetous old sinner. He carried his own low temperature always about him. No warmth could warm him, no wintry weather chill him. Once upon a time, of all the days in the year on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the fire of Bob Cratchit, his clerk, was so very much smaller that it looked like one coal. Wherefore the clerk tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of strong imagination, he failed.
A Merry Christmas, Uncle. God save you.
It was Scrooge's nephew, Fred.
Bah! Humbug!
Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean it.
I do. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor.
Come then, what right do you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You're rich. Merry Christmas.
Damn your Merry Christmas! What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older, not an hour richer? If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Uncle!
Nephew, you keep your Christmas in your way and I'll keep it in mine.
But you don't keep it.
Let me alone, then. Much good may it do you, much good it has ever done you.
There are many things from which I might have derived good, but which I have not profited, Christmas among the rest. I have always thought of Christmas as a good time, a kind, forgiving time, the only time I know of when men and women seem to open their shut-up hearts freely and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe it has done me good, and will do me good, and so I say God bless it.
Let me hear another sound from you, Mr. Cratchit, and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. You're quite a powerful speaker, sir. I wonder you don't go into Parliament.
Don't be angry, Uncle. Dine with us tomorrow.
I'll see you damned first.
But why?
Why did you get married?
Because I fell in love.
Because you fell in love?
Nay, Uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it as a reason now?
Good afternoon.
I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why can't we be friends?
I said good afternoon.
I'm sorry you're so stubborn, but I have made the trial and homage to Christmas, and I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So a Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Good afternoon.
And a Happy New Year.
Good afternoon.
The clerk, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, let two other people in. They were portly gentlemen, with books and papers in their hands. They bowed to Scrooge.
Scrooge and Marley's, I believe. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?
Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago, this very night.
At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts.
Are there no prisons?
Plenty of prisons.
And the workhouses, are they still in operation?
Yes, they are. I only wish I could say they were not.
A few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. What shall we put you down for?
Nothing.
Oh, you wish to remain anonymous.
I wish to be left alone. I don't make myself merry at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned, and those who are badly off must go there.
Many would rather die.
If they would rather die, they had better do it, and decrease the surplus population.
The gentleman withdrew, and Scrooge returned to his labors with an approved opinion of himself. The owner of one scant young nose stooped down at Scrooge's keyhole to regale him with a Christmas carol. But at the first sound of "God bless ye, merry gentle," Scrooge seized the ruler with such energy that the singer fled in terror. At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house arrived.
You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose.
If it's convenient, sir.
It's not convenient and it's not fair. When I pay a day's wages for no work.
It's only once a year, sir.
A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier the next morning.
The clerk promised that he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl. The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk went down a slide on Cornhill, at the end of a line of boys, 20 times in honor of its being Christmas Eve. Scrooge went home. Having his key in the lock of the door, Scrooge saw in the knocker, not a knocker, but Marley's face. It looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up on its ghostly forehead. Its hair was curiously stirred, as if by a breath of hot air. It was a knocker again. To say that Scrooge was not startled would be untrue, but he put his hand upon the key, turned it sturdily, and walked in. He did look cautiously behind the door, as if he half expected the sight of Marley's pigtail sticking out into the hall. But there was nothing, so he closed it with a bang. The sound resounded through the house like thunder. Scrooge fastened the door and went up the stairs, slowly too. He walked through his rooms to see that all was right. Quite satisfied, he locked himself in his room, double-locked, which was not his custom, and put on his dressing gown and slippers and his nightcap.
Humbug.
His glance happened to rest on a bell, a disused bell, that communicated for some purpose now forgotten with the highest story of the building. It was with a strange, inexplicable dread that Scrooge saw this bell begin to swing. It swung so softly that it barely made a sound, but soon it rang out loudly, as did every bell in the house. The bells ceased as they had begun. They were succeeded by a clanking noise deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain in the cellar. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound, and then he heard the sound much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door.
I won't believe it.
His color changed, though, when it came through the heavy door and into the room before his eyes. Marley. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and made of cash boxes, keys, and padlocks. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, looking through his waistcoat, could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind. No, nor did he believe it even now.
What do you want with me?
Much.
Who are you?
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley. You don't believe in me.
I don't.
Why do you doubt your senses?
Because a little thing affects them, a slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of underdone potato. There's more gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are.
The spirit raised such a frightful cry and shook its chain with such an appalling noise that Scrooge fell to his knees.
Mercy! Why do spirits walk the earth? Why do they come to me?
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death, and witness what it cannot share, but might have shared, and turn to happiness.
You're fettered. Tell me why.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was as heavy and as long as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since.
Scrooge glanced about him in the expectation of finding himself surrounded by some 50 fathoms of iron cable, but he could see nothing.
In life, my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole. Oh, not to know that any spirit working kindly in its little sphere, whatever it may be, will find its mortal life too short for its vast usefulness. Yet, such was I.
But you were always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? Mankind was my business. The common welfare my business. At this time of the year I suffer most. Hear me! I am here to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate.
You were always a good friend to me, Jacob.
You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob?
It is.
I think I'd rather not.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow, when the bell tolls 1.
Couldn't I take them all at once?
Expect the second, the next night at the same hour. The third the next night, when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to me, see me no more, and for your own sake, remember what has passed between us.
Marley faded, and the night had become as it had been. Scrooge examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double locked. He tried to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable. And being, from the emotion he had undergone or the lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, went straight to bed and fell asleep upon the instant. When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that he could scarcely distinguish the windows from the walls of his chamber. The hour bell sounded with a deep, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room upon an instant. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung down its back, was white as if with age, yet the face had not a wrinkle in it. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprung a bright, clear jet of light, with a great extinguisher for a cap under its arm.
Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me?
I am.
Who and what are you?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, your past.
Spirit, put on your cap. Be covered.
Would you so soon put out the light I give?
I've no intention of offending you.
The jet of light coming from the spirit's head dimmed.
Thank you. What business brings you here?
Your welfare.
A peaceful night of unbroken rest would have been more conducive to that end.
Your reclamation, then. Rise. Walk with me.
It would have been in vain for Scrooge to plead that he was clad but lightly, and that he had a cold upon him at the time. The spirit's grasp, though gentle, was not to be resisted. They passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road. The city had entirely vanished. It was a clear, cold winter day.
Good heavens, I know this place. I was a boy here.
You know the way?
Know it? I could walk it blindfolded.
Strange to have forgotten it for so many years.
Some shaggy ponies were seen trotting towards them with boys upon their backs, in great spirits. Scrooge knew and named every one. Why was he filled with gladness when he heard them give each other Merry Christmas as they parted for their homes? What was Merry Christmas to Scrooge? Out upon Merry Christmas.
The school is not quite deserted. A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still.
They approached a bare, melancholy room. At a plain desk, a lonely boy was reading by a feeble fire, and Scrooge sat down and wept to see his poor, forgotten self.
Poor boy. I wish... But it's too late now.
What is the matter?
Nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something, that's all.
A little girl, much younger than the boy, came darting in.
I have come to bring you home, dear brother. Home. Home. Home.
Home, Fan?
Yes, home, for good. Father is so much kinder than he used to be. He sent me in a coach to bring you.
She clapped her hands and laughed, and stood on tiptoe to embrace him. Then she began to drag him in her childish eagerness towards the door.
Always a delicate creature, but she had a large heart.
So she had. I'll not gainsay it. Spirit? God forbid.
She died a woman and had, as I think, children.
One child?
True, your nephew.
Yes.
They were in a city. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it.
Was I apprenticed here?
At the sight of an old gentleman in a Welsh wig sitting behind a high desk, Scrooge cried out in great excitement.
Why, it's old Fezzywig! Bless his heart, it's Fezzywig alive again!
Old Fezzywig laid down his pen and looked up at the clock, rubbed his hands and laughed all over himself, and called out in a comfortable, oily, rich, fat, jovial voice,
Yo, ho there, Ebenezer.
Scrooge's former self, now grown into a young man, came briskly in.
No more work tonight, my boy. Christmas Eve, Ebenezer. Let's have lots of room here before a man can say Jack Robinson.
It was done in a minute. Every movable was packed off, the floor was swept, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was snug and warm and as bright a ballroom as you would desire on a winter's night. In came a fiddler, who went up to the lofty desk and made an orchestra of it, and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezzywig, one vast substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. In they all came, one after another, and away they all went, 20 couples at once, hands half round and back again the other way, down the middle and up again, round and round in various stages of grouping. There was cake and there were pies, but the great effect of the evening came when old Fezzywig stood out to dance with his wife. 24 pairs of partners, but if they had been twice as many, old Fezzywig would have been a match for them. A positive light appeared to issue from his calves. The whole of this time Scrooge acted like a man out of his wits. He corroborated everything, remembered everything, enjoyed everything.
Giving people pleasure is such a small matter. He has spent but a few pounds. Is that so much that he deserves this praise?
It isn't that. It isn't that, Spirit. He has a power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toll. The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune.
What is the matter?
Nothing in particular. I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all.
They were out of doors on a lush hillside. Again Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, in the prime of life. There was an eager, restless, greedy motion in his eye, which showed the passion that had taken root, and where the shadow of the growing tree would fall. He sat by a fair young girl, in whose eyes were tears.
There is nothing on which it is so hard as poverty, and nothing it condemns with such severity as the pursuit of wealth.
You fear the world too much. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one, until the master passion, gain, engrosses you.
Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I am not changed toward you.
Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so. You were another man.
I was a boy.
Your own feeling tells you you were not as you are. I release you.
Have I ever sought release?
In words, no. In a changed nature, in everything that made my love of any worth or value in your sight, I release you. May you be happy in the life you have chosen.
Show me no more. Why do you delight to torture me?
These are the shadows of things that have been. That they are what they are. Do not blame me.
Remove me. I cannot bear it. Take me back. Haunt me no more, no longer.
The ghost's white light was burning high and bright, and Scrooge seized the extinguisher cap and pressed it down upon its head. The spirit dropped beneath it, but though Scrooge pressed with all of his force, he could not hide the light, which streamed from under the hat unbroken. Scrooge was conscious of being exhausted, and further, of being in his own bedroom. He had barely time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep. Awaking in the middle of a prodigiously tough snore, Scrooge felt, though he knew not how, that he had slept through an entire day and well into the night. The bell struck 1. A strange voice called his name, a jolly giant glorious to see.
Come in and know me better, man.
Though the spirit's eyes were kind, Scrooge did not like to meet them. It was clothed in a simple green robe, bordered with white fur. On its head it wore a holly wreath, set here and there with shining icicles.
I am the ghost of Christmas present. Have you met with others of my family? My older brothers who have preceded me?
I don't think I have, Spirit. Have you had many brothers?
More than 1,800.
A tremendous family to provide for, Spirit. I went forth last night on compulsion and have learned a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have to teach me, let me profit by it.
Touch my robe.
Scrooge held it, fast, and the spirit led him straight to Bob Cratchit's house. Up rose Mrs. Cratchit, and she laid the cloth, assisted by Belinda Cratchit, second of her daughters, while Master Peter Cratchit plunged a fork into the saucepan of potatoes. 2 smaller Cratchits came tearing in, screaming that outside the baker's they had smelt the goose. And in came Bob, and Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Alas for Tiny Tim, he bore a little crutch. The 2 young Cratchits hustled Tiny Tim off into the wash-house.
And how did Tim behave?
As good as gold. He gets thoughtful sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things. He told me, coming home, he hoped people saw him in church, because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see.
His active little crutch was heard upon the floor, and back came Tiny Tim, escorted by his brother and sister to a stool before the fire. Master Peter and the 2 young Cratchits went to fetch the goose, with which they soon returned in high procession. Such a bustle ensued that you might have thought the goose the rarest of all birds, and in truth it was something very like that in this house. Its tenderness and flavor and size were themes of universal admiration. At last the dinner was done, and Bob proposed.
A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us.
God bless us, everyone,
said Tiny Tim last of all. The chestnuts went round, and they had a song about a lost child traveling in the snow, from Tiny Tim, who had a plaintive little voice and sang it well indeed.
Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live.
I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved.
No. Oh, no, kind Spirit. Say he will be spared.
If these shadows remain unaltered, the child will die. What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it and decease the surplus population. Man, if man you be, will you decide what men shall live, what men shall die? It may be, in the sight of heaven, you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child.
Scrooge hung his head, but he raised it speedily on hearing his own name.
Mr. Scrooge! I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast.
The founder of the feast indeed. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon.
My dear, the children, Christmas Day.
It should be Christmas Day, on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. Nobody knows it better than you do, Robert.
My dear, Christmas Day.
I'll drink his health for your sake, and the day's, not for his.
The children drank the toast after her. It was the first of their proceedings which had no heartiness. It was a great surprise to Scrooge to hear a hearty laugh and recognize it as his nephew's, and finding himself in a bright, gleaming room.
He said that Christmas was a humbug. He believed it, too. He's a comical old fella, that's the truth, and not as pleasant as he might be. However, her offenses carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him.
I have no patience with him.
Oh, I have. I am sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself. Always. Here he takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come to dine with us. What's the consequence?
I think he loses a very fine dinner.
I was only going to say that he loses some pleasant moments. I mean, to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not.
But Scrooge and the Spirit were again upon their travels. The Spirit stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful. On foreign lands, and they were close at home. By poverty, and it was rich. In misery's every refuge, the Spirit left his blessing and taught Scrooge his precepts.
Spirit, forgive me, but I see something strange.
From the folding of its robe, the Spirit brought 2 children, wretched, frightful, hideous, miserable. They clung to its garment. Scrooge started back, appalled.
Are they yours?
They are man's, and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Beware them both, but most of all beware this boy. For one on his brow I see that written which is doom. Unless the writing is erased, deny it, and abide the end.
Have they no refuge, or resource?
Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?
The bell struck 12. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, Scrooge remembered the prediction of Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its face, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. The Spirit neither spoke nor moved.
Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come? You are about to show me the shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us. Is that so, Spirit?
The upper part of the garment was constricted in its folds, as if the Spirit had inclined its head.
Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company, and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?
The Spirit pointed straight before him.
Lead on, lead on. It is precious time to me. Lead on, Spirit.
The Spirit stopped beside a knot of businessmen.
I don't know much about it. I only know he's dead.
When did he die?
Last night, I believe.
I thought he'd never die. What has he done with his money?
Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me, that's all I know. It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for I don't know of anybody to go of it.
Scrooge looked towards the Spirit for an explanation, but the phantom only glided on into an obscure part of town which reeked with crime and filth. Sitting in a shop was a gray-haired rascal. A woman slunk into the shop with a heavy bundle, which she threw on the floor.
Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did. If he wanted to keep them after he was dead, look at old Scrooge. Why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? Then he'd have had somebody look after him and he was struck with death, instead of lying alone by himself, gasping out his last. Open that bundle door and let him know the value of it.
Old Joe unfastened a great many knots and dragged out a large roll.
Bad curtains! You don't mean to say you took them down, rings and all, with him lying there?
Yes, I do.
His blankets?
He isn't likely to catch cold without them.
Ah, you may look through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find a hole in it, nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me.
What do you call wasting it?
Putting it on him to be buried in. Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again.
Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror.
Spirit, I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends to be that way now. Spirit, let me see some tenderness connected with a death.
They entered Bob Cratchit's house. They found Mrs. Cratchit and the children seated round the fire. Quiet. Very quiet.
It must be near his time.
Past it, rather. But I think he walks a little slower than he used, Mother.
And Bob came in.
You went today then, Robert?
Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. Oh, my little boy.
Spectre, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. Tell me what man it was whom so many rejoiced was dead.
They were in a graveyard. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one.
Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or shadow of things that may be only?
Still, the ghost pointed to the grave.
Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, but if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it is thus, with what you show me.
Trembling, Scrooge read upon the stone, Ebenezer Scrooge.
No, oh no, Spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. Why show me this, if I'm past all hope?
For the first time, the hand appeared to shake.
Good Spirit, pity me. I will honor Christmas in my heart and keep it all the year. The spirits of all 3 Christmases will strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me, I may sponge away the writing on this stone.
Holding up his hands in a last prayer, he saw an alteration in the phantom's garments. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down to a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. Best of all, the time before him was his own.
Jacob, heaven and Christmas time be praised. The shadows of the things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know they will. I don't know what day it is. I don't know how long I have been among the spirits. I don't know anything.
Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head.
Hello! Hello there!
He cried downward to a boy in Sunday clothes.
What's today?
Eh?
What's today, my fine fellow?
Today? Why, Christmas Day?
It's Christmas Day. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Hello!
Hello?
Do you know the poulterer's shop at the corner?
I should hope I did.
Ah, an intelligent boy. A remarkable boy. Do you know if they have sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there?
What, the one big as me?
A delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck.
It's hanging up there now.
Is it? Go buy it.
Are you serious?
No, I am in earnest. Go and buy it and tell him to bring it here. Come back with the man and I will give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes and I'll give you half a crown.
The boy was off like a shot.
I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. He won't know who sent it.
As Scrooge waited downstairs for the poulterer, the knocker caught his eye.
I shall love it as long as I live. What an honest expression it has. Here's the turnkey. Hello?
The chuckle with which he said this, and the chuckle with which he paid for the bird, and the chuckle for which he recompensed the boy, were only to be exceeded by the chuckle with which he sat down breathless in his own chair again, and chuckled until he cried. He dressed himself all in his best and at last got out into the streets. Scrooge went to church and walked about the streets and looked up at the windows and patted children on the head and watched people hurrying to and fro. He never dreamed that anything could give him so much happiness. In the afternoon, he turned his steps towards his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up.
Fred?
Why, bless my soul.
It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?
Let him in? It's a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. Scrooge was at home in 5 minutes. Oh, but he was early at the office the next morning. If he could only catch Bob Cratchit coming in late. And he did it. The clock struck 9. No Bob. A quarter past. No Bob. He was a full 18 minutes and a half behind his time.
Hello? What do you mean by coming in here at this time of day?
I'm very sorry, sir. It's only once a year, sir.
Now I'll tell you what, my friend. I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer, and therefore, I'm going to raise your salary. A Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas than I have wished you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and I'll endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we'll discuss your affairs this afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop. Bob? Now, before you dot another I, make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he became a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them. His own heart laughed, and that was enough for him. And it was always said of Scrooge that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed that knowledge. May that truly be said of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, every one.
Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her King. Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. Let us sing. Oh, let us sing. Joy to the world, the Savior reigns. Let man